to ELA Grade 6 for the week of May 18th, 2020. Today, we will be learning about the characteristics of autobiographies and biographies. Both tell the story of a person's life. Each uses a different point of view to share their history. First, we will participate in 2 tutorials from Collections Digital Resources. The first tutorial is about autobiographies.
In this tutorial, you will learn to recognize the characteristics of biographies and autobiographies, to consider the strengths and limitations of both forms. When your friends ask what you did over the weekend and you answer, "Well, you are describing a little bit of your life story. You are telling a tale from your own life. People write autobiographies to share their lives with others. An autobiography is a story of a person's life told by that person. Autobiographies are written in the first-person point of view. The writer, or subject, uses the word I, me, my, and we to talk about himself or herself. Writers of autobiographies tell about memorable events, experiences, and people in their lives. Sometimes these events and people are well known. In addition to describing their experiences, writers may also share their thoughts and feelings about different times in their lives. Click to learn about the kinds of descriptions that writers often include in their autobiographies.
So someone might include an important event in their autobiography, such as, I stood on the beach at Kitty Hawk watching the Wright brothers as they made their airplane fly. So that would have been very important if a person had experienced that. Or perhaps they've met a famous person. That morning, I met a young boxer named Cassius Clay. The world would later know him as Muhammad Ali. But back then, he was a loud, funny kid with a whip-fast jab. They may also share a personal feeling. I grew sad watching the ship pull away from the harbor. I was sure I'd never see my family again. Or a private thought. In my moment of triumph, with my teammates cheering, I remember my uncle who first taught me to play soccer. And then maybe a funny story. During our visit to the state capitol, a senator suddenly invited my 8th grade class to lunch, but the cafeteria was closed, so we had only animal crackers. Despite our hunger, it turned out to be a memorable day.
Remember that in an autobiography, the writer is the subject. That writer uses first-person pronouns to refer to himself or herself. Read each title. Based on the title, is the book an autobiography? Choose yes or no.
The first one, My Struggle for Freedom. Well, the first clue here is a first-person pronoun of my. So I'm saying this is probably an autobiography. I'm going to click yes. Yay, we're right. The second one, William Shakespeare, His Life and Times. This one I'm going to say sounds more like a biography to me. There are no first person. It sounds like someone else is going to be telling the story of William Shakespeare. So I'm going to say no to that one. Yay, we got both right.
Use what you've just learned about autobiographies to analyze these 2 passages. Could each passage be taken from an autobiography? Choose yes or no.
So let's look at the first one. Martin Luther King Jr. went to President Lyndon Baines Johnson's office and asked him to support the Civil Rights Act. He hoped that President Johnson would make a bold choice. Well, there are no first-person pronouns in here, and it sounds like someone else is telling the story. So I would say this was probably not taken from an autobiography. And our second piece. As president, I felt that I had to see the Civil Rights Act become a law. Americans deserved it. It was too important for me to ignore. So here we go with our first-person pronouns of I, me. So I'm going to say this is probably from an autobiography. Great. Now we have a good understanding of autobiography. Now we will participate in a second tutorial about biographies.
Like an autobiography, a biography tells the story of a person's life. However, a biography is written by someone other than the subject. The writer or biographer uses third-person pronouns like he, she, his, and her to refer to the subject. We read biographies and autobiographies to find out about the compelling lives and times of other people. Often, those people are famous, but sometimes they are regular people who have made a difference. Either way, biographies help us learn more about the people who never wrote about themselves. Biographers do research to find out about the subject's life. They consult many sources, including books about the subject's journals, and interviews. Sometimes biographers talk to people who knew the subject. They may even talk to the subject, him or herself. Click to learn about the kinds of details that writers may include in their biographies.
One piece that a biographer might include is a widely accepted fact, such as, the Duke was only an advisor to the Queen, yet by all accounts he made decisions for the Queen and essentially ruled the land. And perhaps statements by those close to the subject. The artist's new collection was celebrated as his finest work to date. It's interesting, the artist's oldest daughter wrote, because my dad was disappointed in his latest work. He was surprised by the public's positive reaction to it. Or a revealing statement from the subject. This executive was a powerful person. How did she become so successful? She told her children, I felt like a failure at times, but I refused to give up. And a funny story. Dr. Wilson was known as an extraordinary explorer. Yet, to his closest friends, he often was the target of practical jokes. One day he heard a cry of help. He raced from his tent and jumped onto his horse while his friends watched. They roared when the horse took off and the loosened saddle stayed behind, dumping Dr. Wilson onto the cold, wet ground. So that was probably very funny for his friends, but I don't know how funny it was for him. And details about the subject's feelings might also be included. Though she was an experienced performer, Angela was scared every time she played in public. She hid her fear from her audiences and even from her friends. However, she wrote about it almost every day in her diary.
As you've just learned, biographers use third-person pronouns like he, she, we, his, hers, them, and theirs to refer to the subject and other people in the account. Read each passage. Is it from a biography? Click yes or no.
Our first one. Craig was young, but he clearly was a genius. His co-workers could not believe how lucky they were to have him there. So someone else is telling us about Craig, because we're seeing he, his, that, and they, which are all indications that someone else is telling the story. Those are third-person pronouns. So I'm going to say that this is probably from a biography. Yes. Second one, I decided to risk everything on this business. My savings would soon be gone. We needed some real income. First clue, first pronoun I, and another one my. So it sounds like this person is telling us of his own experiences. So I think that's more of probably coming from an autobiography. So I'm going to say no here. Okay. And the last, Elizabeth studied by candlelight to complete her schooling. So again, we're seeing the third person pronoun of her. So someone else is telling us about Elizabeth. So I'm going to say this is probably from a biography. All right. Got them all right.
As with an autobiography, the title of a biography can be a clue that the author is writing about someone else's life, not about his or her own. Read each title. Is the book probably a biography? Choose yes or no.
Right, so let's take a look at the first title. Kit Carson, the first scout of the Old West. This sounds to me like a biography. Someone is going to be telling us about the person, Kit Carson. So I'm going to say it's probably going to be a biography. Yes. Second one. Well now, my road to recovery. So we have that first pronoun of my. So we're thinking someone is going to be telling us about their experience. So I'm going to say this is probably not a biography, but an autobiography. All right, we got both right. So now we know something about biographies. Let's review briefly what we've just learned. Here are some characteristics of an autobiography. The story of a person's life told by that person, written in first-person point of view, and uses the pronouns I, me, my, and we. Characteristics of a biography, the story of a person's life told by someone else, written in third-person point of view, and uses pronouns he, she, his, and her. We will be reading some very short passages from an autobiography and a biography about Colin Powell, who is a famous military leader and who has also served our country working under our presidents. You will want to complete the organizers in your packet as we read, or take notes on your own paper. The first excerpt is from Powell's autobiography. It worked for me in life and leadership. So there's the picture of the book cover right there. As we read, look for answers to the following questions. Notice what pronouns are used, what type of point of view, what thoughts or opinions are included, and what is revealed about his personality. And as I said, we're just going to take a look at very small passages. You're a good worker, he told me when I finished. Come back tomorrow. That was the beginning of a close friendship with Jay and his family that continued through college and for the next 50 years, long after Jay had died. I worked part-time at the store a few hours a day during the summer and long hours during the Christmas season. I worked hard, a habit I got from my Jamaican immigrant parents. Every morning they left early for the garment district in Manhattan, and they came home late at night. All my relatives were hard workers. They came out of that common immigrant experience of arriving with nothing and expecting that the new life ahead of them would not be easy. Jamaicans had a joke. That lazy brute, him only have 2 jobs. So let's take a look. How can we answer some of these questions? Try my highlighter. Okay, so we can see the pronouns he, I'd, I. So those are some of the pronouns, and if it's spoken from I, that's first person point of view. Now, what thoughts or opinions are included? His Jamaican parents and relatives believed in hard work. They were all very hard workers, so that's what he describes here. And what is revealed about his personality? He is also a hard worker. Right here it says, I worked hard, a habit I got from my Jamaican immigrant parents. Next, we will read an excerpt from a biography about Powell. Colin Powell, Military Leader by Warren Brown. Again, the book cover is on the right. Again, we will look for what pronouns are used, what type of point of view, what facts are included, and what information is revealed about what others thought of Powell. By this time, Colin had developed into a tall, strong teenager with a natural flair for leadership. At Morris High School, he was elected class representative, served as treasurer of the Service League, whose members helped out around the school, and lettered in track. Neighborhood youth learned not to push him around. He moved freely among Hunts Point's various racial groups and even managed to learn some Yiddish while working after school at Sixers, a store that sold baby furniture. In his free time, Colin and his best friend Gene Norman raced bicycles along the sweeping curve of Kelly Street or played games of stickball. Excuse me. So let's go back. Some of the pronouns we're seeing are he, okay, he again, his free time, his best friend. So we're getting a sense that someone else is telling the story here, and it's from third person point of view. So what types of information are we getting? What facts are included? Well, up here, he was elected class representative. He served as treasurer of the Service League, and he lettered in track. So those are just some basic facts that the biographer must have researched. And what information is revealed about what others thought of Colin? Well, he was a tall teenager with a natural flair for leadership. So people recognized that right away. And then down here, the neighborhood youths learned not to push him around. Okay, right here. There are larger excerpts of each of these texts included in your packet, and I encourage you to read more about Colin Powell. He's a very interesting and successful person. And now it's time for you to show what you know. Turn to this section in your packet or use a sheet of paper to respond to the prompt. Refer to your notes from each text. And that's it. Next week, we will focus on central idea and determine a central idea of an article. Until then, be safe, have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hello, and welcome back to ELA Grade 6 GT for the week of May 18, 2020. In this lesson, we will analyze the impact of Shakespeare's language choices on meaning and tone in order to engage in effective wordplay. Yes, we will be having some fun with words. So let's start with taking a look at a joke. Camping can be intense. Get it? Intense sounds like intense. This is an example of a pun or a play on words. Shakespeare is known for his puns, or the ways that he plays with words. Shakespeare loved puns and used them as a powerful method of making meaning. We will be experiencing some types of wordplay and then read and interpret some lines that Shakespeare used in his plays that contain puns. Puns usually derive their humor in one of three ways. The first being multiple meaning words, words that have more than one meaning, as in iceberg, which can be a huge mass of ice, and it can also mean a type of lettuce, iceberg lettuce. And in this little clip art, we have someone created a model of the Titanic. It looks like out of a cucumber, and it's heading toward an iceberg head of lettuce. The second way for puns to derive humor with words that sound is with words that sound alike, as in the camping example from our opening joke. Remember, camping can be intense, and it's funny because camping usually is intense. The third way is with homophones, words that are pronounced the same but have different spellings and meanings. Homophones can be quite confusing. We will watch a short video from Discovery Education that will help with understanding homophones in our next slide.
What is a homophone? I'm posting a message reminding my friends that our softball team is on a break this week. Good thing I know that there are two ways to spell the word break, and that they mean totally different things. In fact, there are many words in the English language that sound the same but are spelled differently. These tricky spelling and vocabulary words are called homophones. Homophones are words that sound alike but have different meanings and are spelled differently. Homophones are commonly confused when people write and text and post messages. One set of homophones that can sometimes confuse writers and social media posters is break and break. These two words certainly sound the same, but they mean very different things. To make matters even more confusing, each word can be used as either a noun or a verb. Let's take a closer look. The word break, B-R-A-K-E, is a word that can be used as a noun or a verb. As a noun, it is a device that stops movement. As a verb, B-R-A-K-E means to stop movement. Let's look at how this word would be used. Samantha pushed the brake to make her go-kart stop. In this sentence, brake is used as a noun. But in this sentence, his dad braked suddenly when a cat ran into the road. The word brake is used as a verb. The word break, spelled B-R-E-A-K, can also be used as a noun or a verb. When it is used as a verb, it can mean to destroy or smash into pieces. Don't break the glass is an example of a sentence in which the word break is used in this way. B-R-E-A-K can also be used as a noun to mean a short pause or an opening. This is the kind of break my softball team is taking this week. Here's another sentence using break this way. After working for an hour in the garden, she wanted to take a break in the shade. Let's review what we have just learned about homophones. Question 1. Words are considered homophones if they A. Sound alike, B. Are spelled differently, C. Have different meanings, D. All of the above. If you answered D, you know that homophones sound alike but are spelled differently and have different meanings. Question 2. I needed to take a blank from reading because my eyes were getting tired. A. Break, B-R-A-K-E. B. Break, B-R-E-A-K. The correct answer is B. I needed to take a break, B-R-E-A-K, from reading because my eyes were getting tired. Question 3. It was difficult to stop my bike because the blank wasn't working correctly. A. Break, B-R-A-K-E. B. Break, B-R-E-A-K. The correct answer is A. It was difficult to stop my bike because the brake, B-R-A-K-E, wasn't working correctly.
Okay, so hopefully we have a better understanding of homophones, which can be pretty tricky. So now let's try it. We will go through most of the puns in the try it section of your packet for this week. If you have it, get it out and follow along. And if not, just listen and enjoy the puns. So we're going to label each pun as funny because of it's either a multiple meaning word, and we'll use the abbreviation MMW, or it's a homophone, and we'll just label that H, or similar sounding words, which we'll label SSW. Ready? Number 1, how do celebrities stay cool? They have many fans. Get it? Fans. So that's going to be a multiple meaning word, because fans can be people who really follow celebrities, or fans can be little things or big things that move air for us. 2, he ate wheat even though he was allergic to it because he was a glutton for punishment. So here we go. This is a funny one too, because gluten is the part of wheat that most people are allergic to. And he's saying gluten instead of glutton for punishment because the words sound very similar. Similar sounding words is what makes this a funny pun. And next, whether it's a pancake or a baseball team, the secret is to start with a good batter. Okay, another multiple meaning word. So the pun here is good batter. So we can have a batter on a baseball team, or we can have pancake batter. 4, when fishermen and women get too competitive, they start suffering from peer pressure. So we have a homophone, peer. Peer is where you would fish from or where you would tie up a boat perhaps. But what they're talking about here is peer pressure, pressure from people that they work with or are close to, and that would be spelled P-E-E-R. 5, the trouble with skunks is that they don't have common sense. We know that skunks are stinky, okay, so they've used sense, but there's also the other word, the homophone of sense, meaning having, good judgment. Let's try a couple more. I went to a seafood disco last week and pulled a mussel. So again, we have another homophone, mussel. Mussel is a type of seafood, but mussel is also something that we have in our bodies, which is spelled M-U-S-C-L-E. 7, I saw an elephant in the baggage claim area of an airport. He was waiting for his trunk. So we have a multiple meaning word as our pun here. Trunk, elephants have trunk, and that can also mean a type of baggage. And lastly, the Mona Lisa was brought up in court on charges of murder, but it turned out that she had been framed. So again, we have another multiple meaning word of framed. We know the Mona Lisa was a portrait that would have been framed, but getting framed can also mean you were charged, set up with a crime falsely. Okay, now we're ready for Show What You Know. I hope you've enjoyed these puns, and maybe you can even use them on some of your friends. So in the Show What You Know section of your packet, we're going to examine the puns from Shakespeare's plays. We're going to identify and explain the meaning of each pun. Let's do the first one together. Mercutio has been stabbed by Tybalt. He says, "No, 'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough, 'twill serve. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man." And our pun is grave man. And this is from Romeo and Juliet. So here's our answer. The pun is grave man. Tomorrow, Mercutio will be dead and will be buried in a grave. Also, grave means serious. Mercutio is the type of character who jokes, even as he is dying. So go ahead and finish up the next two on your own, and then check your answers with the answer key that is provided in your packet. Next week, we will analyze the monologues and scenes from Julius Caesar and Macbeth. So be sure to tune in. And that's all for today. So be well, be safe, and have the best week ever. See you next time.